why plants die in winter. So, well, some plants will die and some plants just stop growing and lose their leaves and will just lie dormant during the winter period. So it's because they are absorbing different field strengths of the carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen that is not compatible with the plant's DNA, RNA structure, so they cannot grow. So if we look at some plants that grow in summer and not in winter, or they lose their leaves in winter, is because that match in field strength of the CO2 and what's available in the environment is not the same because of the change in the gap of the Earth and the Sun, and we create different field strengths of the cohans in winter compared to the summer. And so each plant or tree has its own margrave that is able to interact with the right fields. They have to find a match and then they're able to grow. If they don't find a match, there is no growth, or the plants just lie dormant during the winter months because they aren't able to create and attract the right fields between their leaves and produce the amino acids, which is the food for the plants. Plants growing in winter, as we say, each plant or tree has its own margrave and needs to interact with the right fields. So your plants that are able to grow in winter is because their structure and internal structure of the plant allows them to absorb and use the fields of the winter carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen to create their amino acids. And as again, as I said, the deciduous trees lose their leaves because the field strengths coming in is no match for what they need, and so the leaves shut down and drop off, and then the plant just goes into a nice long sleep during the winter time because they cannot create the food that they need. As I said there, they lose their leaves in the winter. And essentially when the leaves die, it's the same as the gap between the two plates, between the two surfaces of the leaf closes, and so there can be no more field interactions. The internal structure of the leaf can't create the CO2 anymore, so the leaf just dies, changes color, and falls off the tree. So all the plant does is essentially just closes that gap down between the two surfaces of the leaf. Now this came to, I had showed in one of the workshops our tomatoes that grew in winter last year. So I'll just show you a couple of the pictures of those. That was midwinter in July. And there were the tomatoes in September, so coming into the springtime. There was October with lovely tomatoes there. And so just to reiterate our feedback on that at that stage is during November, we were picking lovely tomatoes, say with real lovely tomato flavor. And then the summer really kicked in here, and we go from normal weather of 25 to 29, and then we have heat waves of 35 to 40 degrees. And this hit us at the end of November. So we had a change in condition, which was too much for unhappy. And within almost 2 weeks, they all just died. It was just such a shock to their system. Now, in looking at the tomatoes and trying to understand from what we've learned today is why they did grow during winter. So first of all, I've looked at why, because all we did to the tomato plants was we had CO2 GANS in the water for the plants, but I'd also quite religiously, I was spraying at least once a week the foliage of the tomatoes with the CO2. Now, if you have a look at, by us creating a CO2 environment with the plants that the tomatoes were happy to take in, my theory, and I say it's just a theory at this stage, is that when we had the weaker fields of the carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen in the winter, which is interacting with the stronger fields of the CO2 environment that we had created around the plant. Was it a case of the stronger environment feeding the weaker fields so that we could get stronger fields coming in of the right field strength for the tomato plants to continue to grow, where they could still find a match and grow? So that is what our thinking is, in that what the CO2 does to the environment. So it's not a fertilizer per se, but it creates this environment so that the plants can grow, and it changes the field strength of those fields coming in. So the winter fields, which be much of a weaker than the summer fields, but it's changing them so that the plant can still absorb those fields and continue to grow. And when I had a look at trying to understand why the plants then suddenly died, because it was very, very quick, it was possibly that the stronger, even though we had created the CO2 environment, the stronger fields of the summer coming in, the cohans, interacting with maybe my weaker fields of the CO2, the plants couldn't find a match and they just died. There was just no way they could cope. The other thing was, maybe it was my fault in that, because I had also stopped spraying the plants with CO2 leading up to that sort of heat episode. So one wonders if I'd have continued to spray, maybe they would have survived. So we'll have to try that again next winter, or other people can try with different plants. So it just brings a bit of a deeper understanding of what is really happening with the plants, by understanding the differences of the field strengths of the amino acids in the summer and the winter time.